Flip blue, many Americans are wondering how traditionally red states like Georgia and Wisconsin could be polling for the left. President Trump has his suspicions that suppression polls have played a major role in this outcome. Here's more.
These really phony polls, I have to call them phony polls, fake polls, were designed to keep our voters at home, create the illusion of momentum for Mr. Biden, and diminish Republicans' ability to raise funds. They were what's called suppression polls. Everyone knows that now.
The mainstream media and their polling partners showed Democrat nominee Joe Biden ahead in the race for the White House, and have been for the last few weeks, creating the illusion that President Trump was behind, dropping morale among Republican voters. However, the president's pollster, John McLaughlin, drew attention to the polls showing President Trump nearly tied or ahead of Biden back in October.
Arizona, Trafalgar had us up 4. So you have these polls that we're either in a close race in the battleground states or slightly ahead. So, and that's even better than we were 4 years ago. By the way, that's what the Democrat strategy is and the liberal media strategy is. Discourage the Trump voter.
McLaughlin made the point that the polls weighed heavy on the Republican vote, as a large majority of red voters plan to vote in person on Election Day, while Democrats voted en masse by mail. And while the mainstream media and major pollsters were reporting Biden's 17-point lead in Wisconsin, McLaughlin says his own surveying of voters in the battleground state showed a dead heat race. The polls massively undersampled Republican voters, which McLaughlin calls voter suppression. Also, political analyst and pollster Frank Luntz has said the polling industry has never been more wrong than in this election, pointing to Trump supporters' hesitation to participate in surveys out of caution for their personal information.
How do you explain CNN having a 12-point margin for Joe Biden, which will be nowhere near that when all the votes are counted? Even the most optimistic people on Biden's side say it'll be less than half that. That's not within the margin of error. That's simply being wrong. And the average numbers of all the polls had Joe Biden up by about 8%. And when it's all done, it looks like at best, he'll have a 4% margin.
This suppression comes down to the left trying to make the Republican Party think they had lost before the battle had even begun. Unfortunately, Americans are hearing this after votes have been cast, which the president says falls in line with the liberal media and Democrats' wishes.
And the pollsters got it knowingly wrong. They got it knowingly wrong. We had polls that were so ridiculous, and everybody knew it at the time. There was no blue wave that they predicted. They thought there was going to be a big blue wave. That was false. It was done for suppression reasons. But instead, there was a big red wave. And it's been properly acknowledged, actually, by the media. They were, I think, very impressed. But that was after the fact. That doesn't do us any good.
Suppression polls and voter suppression, coupled with potential voter fraud across the country, has caused anxiety among Americans and lawmakers alike when it comes to the validity of the 2020 presidential election.